January 15th, mark it on your calendar. Congress has until then to come up with a spending plan that Democrats and Republicans can live with, or we could face another government shutdown. We could do this all over again.
But Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that told the Hill newspaper, quote, "There is no education in the second kick of a mule. There will not be another government shutdown." Now, McConnell's Republican colleague echoed that sentiment. Listen.
We're not going to go through the shutdown again because people have been too traumatized by it. There's too much damage.
But Texas Senator and Tea Party favorite Ted Cruz would not rule out a second shutdown. He won't rule out anything in an interview with ABC News. Listen to this.
So you would do it again?
I would do anything, and I will continue to do anything I can to stop the train wreck that is Obamacare. And in particular, look, the test that matters, John, is are we doing anything for all the people that are getting hurt from Obamacare?
All right, let's talk about the way forward with Jason Johnson, an HLN contributor, professor of political science at Hiram College, in studio with us. We appreciate you coming in. And Ben Ferguson, a nationally syndicated radio host in Dallas. Ben, I got to start with you. Will Ted Cruz do this again? You probably don't know the answer to that. No one does. But does he have enough pull in the House to get those House Republicans to toe the line one more time?
Well, he's definitely got pull, but I don't think he's probably going to do this. And I think part of it is because we've seen that the White House also knows that if we have another government shutdown, they're going to get blamed as well for not negotiating. At the very end, we saw a little bit of movement from the White House, and we saw movement from Democrats saying, look, we know we're going to need to change some things, reopen the government. We're willing to look at Obamacare. We're willing to look at changes. And I think that's why Ted Cruz thinks, honestly, this fight was worth it, because now there actually is going to be negotiating. Because if we shut down again, I think the president's going to take a lot more blame for not being willing to keep things moving. And he's got time now. I mean, he should be at Camp David, in my opinion, this weekend with the Republicans saying, we're not going to have this happen again. Let's fix it early. Let's not go to the deadline. Let's move forward. And I think that's probably what's going to happen, is they'll get some sort of compromise.
Speaking of compromise, Jason, Democrats really didn't have to do a whole lot of compromising to get through this initial crisis. But again, it's not over yet.
Right.
What do you see as the biggest hurdles that have to be overcome in order to reach some kind of a compromise negotiation?
Basically, it's sort of entitlement reform and sequestration. What the Democrats want to do is they got to change sequestration. It's not good policy. The idea of just taking a hatchet to our defense, a hatchet to our Social Security and everything else like that, it's not a good plan. The Republicans don't want to give up any more revenue. So if they can find some small deal, it's not going to be a grand bargain, some small deal, I think we'll be able to go forward. The Republicans don't want this again. They don't want any sort of government shutdown that goes into 2014, because that way voters will actually remember by the midterm elections and they'll suffer.
Yeah, Bipartisan Policy Center says that about $600 billion will be spent going until the next debt ceiling limit is hit. 300 of that maybe fixing what had to happen to make us get to this point. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to come to you after this for you, Ben, as well. But Democrats, rather, during this argument have been really fond of making the comparison to a credit card. People at home understand a credit card. But when Americans apply for an increase in their credit limit, the company doesn't just say, hey, we know you need the money, so we'll increase it. There is a conversation about spending and payment history and income before they make that decision.
Right.
Why can't that discussion happen before the increase in the debt ceiling?
Well, here's what's interesting about that. Anytime people say we should run the government the way we run our own homes, look at how most Americans run their homes. Let's be honest. We don't save money. We're not particularly responsible. We're asking the government to be more responsible than we are. And the reality is the government has expenses that regular people don't have. Like, regular people don't have to pay for an army in a foreign country. Regular people don't have to pay for hundreds of millions of seniors who are about to retire. So the idea that we have to have some sort of debate every time we raise the budget ceiling, that doesn't really make much sense. There are things that the Republicans have said that make sense, but the idea of holding the whole country up, that ruins our economy, ruins the global economy.
And Ben, you know, Republicans are supposed to be the party of fiscal responsibility, and yet Republicans are getting a lot of the blame for the government shutdown, and that we've learned has cost our country some $24 billion in revenue. How do you make ends meet here?
Well, you look at $24 billion as nothing compared to the fact that we have a $17 trillion debt is what now the debt clock shows as we reopen the government. $17 trillion is a real number that people are starting to pay attention to. And the other thing is, under Barack Obama, and this is something where this last government shutdown actually put a spotlight on this, the President of the United States of America has never passed a budget. Now, he said, well, it's the Republicans' fault. He had control of the House, he had control of the Senate, and he was the president for 2 years and never passed a budget. And so a lot of people are starting to say, hold on, as President of the United States of America, as Commander-in-Chief, we don't even have a budget for this country, yet you're telling me that you need me to give more money to you? I even know that not having a budget is a terrible plan. And so people are seeing that, and I think that's where this responsibility comes in. I mean, if we want to stop the chaos, then stop having continuing resolutions, which is the equivalent of the American people calling their credit card company on a Friday, begging them, saying, I know I've maxed out my card, but please let me have a couple more grand that I can spend over the next week. But it's not flying with the American people anymore.
Ben, you say that like the president writes up a budget over Saturday night and just hands it in Monday morning. I mean, the Democrats in the Senate have asked for conferees, what, 16, 18 times and have been rejected and came to this point? So it's not like the president then says, we got a budget, let's do it.
Yeah, but asking and doing are two different things. I mean, when you've been president for 5 years, you're the first president in history to ever pass a budget. When you had almost a supermajority at the beginning of your term, this is the difference between looking at something saying kumbaya, and the reality is they don't want a budget because they don't want the American people to actually see where all our money's going, what we're spending on it. Otherwise, you would pass a budget and you'd say, I'm the bigger man, this is my budget, and he's never done it as president. I think it's hurting him right now.
We will see that as we move forward. We've got to wrap up this conversation, but Jason Johnson, Ben Ferguson, we always appreciate the conversation. Thank you for both joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Hey, coming up, Dick Cheney opens up about his health in a